the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not saying Thanos, but like...
Hi, I'm Gabe.
And I'm Kat.
And we're the Ghouls Next Door. And it has been a while.
Yeah.
Since we've been in here, or it's just been a lot, I think, for everyone.
Yeah, I feel like this time of life has both felt like the longest part of my life and simultaneously the shortest period of my life, in that like everything is a lot.
Yeah.
And I feel like I haven't like accomplished, like I don't know how, I feel like we were talking about this in life outside of the Ghouls. We're like, I don't know, we're gonna go just do stuff. Like next year's gonna feel like we're doing a million things.
Yeah.
We're not
we've
used
done nothing.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've like home stuff. We're like keyboard warriors. Or,
Yeah.
you know, it's not. It's been kind of a blur.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just always kind of in dissociated like mode.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because there was, weeks ago we were, recording a normal schedule and we hit a bump after the news about Ahmaud Arbery and talking about time travel and discussing race. And that was like 2 weeks before things were set on fire, literally.
Yeah.
And it was, at that time we were like, wow, this is a lot. Like, we need a break. We need a minute to step back. And so we were going to do like funny mini-sodes that are just like, and then, when our episode aired, we got new news, and that was about George Floyd, and then the world was as angry as we were, if not more. Honestly more. And it became really clear that we have a platform in the way to contribute in the way that we can, given like the limitations that we have, is to continue to educate.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like, it's a long time coming. I mean, we've always used this platform to educate our listeners and watchers to kind of use their media analysis classes and really see things for the way that they are. And so we're going to dive into things for this mini-sode and the next mini-sode that are specific to what is going on outside.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I think a lot of how we used to, we were always educating, but I feel like we always kind of felt like our voices didn't have power to make any kind of real change.
Yeah.
And like this all going down made us kind of realize like how important speaking in like out in general is just so essential, and that like there is power behind your words, and that like, yeah, we're going to get sad. Yeah. We're going to get real. And a lot of what's happening in the world right now is because a lot of people didn't get sad and they didn't get real and they didn't say what we needed to say because we were worried about the impact of it. Yeah. And I think, yeah, it'll be good. We're going to get sad.
Yeah.
But it's a good kind.
We're going to get serious, but in the way that we do. So we'll have some fun. And, these are things that we enjoyed because we have learned as people who study media analysis and history that you can find joy in those things. And we enjoy being educated and finding out new things and kind of learning from each other. Yeah. And so it's kind of like our way to contribute to all of this, because I think if the protests and, the rights and the petitions and all that have showed is that we do have a voice and it does impact the world. And if we keep it going, then we can make a change, because already things are changing. Yeah. And we can't stop is the thing, right? And I think it's kind of like lucky going that COVID-19 happened, because now like everyone was kind of paused and had the time, and it's not something we can escape because this is our whole world right now. And so I think we're going to learn a lot.
The veil of capitalism has been lifted.
Yeah.
Essentially, a lot of the playing fields have been evened in the fact that lots of job loss, lots of everything. Yeah. Everyone's at home or paused.
Yeah, we also got to see that.
Lots of people who aren't paused, unfortunately, because they have to go out there.
Yeah. But I think what we saw is that they can use all the money that they told us that they couldn't use for things. Was there. We could dump trillions of dollars into the stock market.
Police and the military.
Yeah.
Well, who cares about the people? We just gotta protect ourselves from the people. That's what they're telling us.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It's like the people are scary because if they know, they're gonna blow up the train.
Yeah. Exactly. And yes.
I guess they should be scared.
Yeah.
So here we are.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing too, is that they are scared. So, there's, something that we talked about with a previous guest, Ariel, was that she doesn't really watch a lot of horror because real life for people of color tends to be pretty horrific. Yeah. And so that's like, we considered doing an episode on When They See Us or things that Ava DuVernay has done, but I personally couldn't watch When They See Us, and it's not something I don't think I'll ever be able to watch. I know what happens, but that is a horror movie, even for me, as someone who loves horror and watches those things. Like, that's real, and it's something that I can't bring myself to do, and so we're picking specific things that are fictional, but they represent the real world and the impact of, generational pain, And so I think we're, it's getting educational, but we're not covering those very blatant ones. Yeah. So just kind of bearing with us with that. But today we're actually going to be talking about Lovecraft Country, which is one of my favorite books ever. Ever since I read it, I have been a crazy advocate for it. I read it like in 2 days because I was just like so into it. Yeah. It was like, it's you just get into it and you're like, I have to know what's happening. And it was beautifully done. And I just remember feeling scared in a way that I hadn't in a very long time. And so I think that's like a big part of it too, is that it's horror that we kind of take for granted, and I think it's going to be excited. So Lovecraft Country is by Matt Ruff. I have a copy here. It is being adapted into an HBO television series, or like mini series that will air in August. I'm super excited.
It's going to be great. And specifically, I think they do like hour-long, kind of similar to all the shows. Where it's like an hour-long episode for each story. I think I read that.
Yeah, so the book itself is an anthology of all these different stories about like members of this family. Who are experiencing these supernatural things. The HBO show, which is one of the best parts of it, is that it is being produced by one of our favorite guys, Jordan Peele. So we're like super excited about that. So if you don't know, he's the social horror director of Get Out and Us. He also produced the new Candyman. He did not direct it. That was Nia DaCosta, which we're also super excited about. That has been postponed to premiere later in the fall. It was supposed to premiere like 2 days ago from when we're recording this, but COVID-19 happened. The showrunner for this is Misha Green, who does Underground, which is a show about slavery. And one of the stars, or a few of the stars actually from that, are in this as well. There's also the one other person I wanted to kind of mention is Journey Smollett from True Blood, Underground, Friday Night Lights, and she was also in I'm pretty sure it's her, is The Emancipation of Harley Quinn. She was Black Canary. So there's like a lot of like names in there. There's a lot of like characters that are pretty cool, people who you'll probably recognize as we go. Something that I wanted to start out with, because when people hear the name Lovecraft Country, they think H.P. Lovecraft, Howard Phillips. And we have done an episode on Howard Phillips. We have talked extensively about him and how problematic he is.
He's a really bad dude.
He's absolutely disgusting.
It's
gross. He was a racist. He was anti-Semitic.
Semitic.
There you go. Yes. it just all around disgusting.
All the problem things. He had all the things on the list. It was like, what makes you a not great person? Really bad person.
All of them. Yeah. But you know, as far as he goes for horror, right? Like we indulge in a lot of things that came about because of his work. So like we play Arkham Horror, I play like Lovecraft inspired games or read books that have that kind of, you know, feel to it. And it would be, you know, remiss of us to not acknowledge the impact he had on the horror genre. The same way it's like Edgar Allan Poe was also not a great guy. We do not love him by any means. But it would be foolish to be like, Edgar Allan Poe, who's that? What's horror? Like, you know, like you can't, you gotta take it, you know.
Yeah. So we know he exists.
Yes.
We don't need a statue.
Yes, exactly. And we would take
it down.
Statue
down. We just read now.
Yeah.
We just read the things
what happens.
We know from education.
Yeah.
That's not like hidden.
Yeah. What I think is like, you know, going to be exciting about the show is that there's a lot of people who read just the title or hear just the title and don't understand what it is and are going to try to tune in thinking it's just like Lovecraft homage all over the place and not realizing that it's actually confronting all of the problems of Lovecraft himself and the characters that he wrote in the world that he lived in. And it's just totally tearing it down. And I think that's phenomenal and beautiful and like just awesome.
You want to really make racists mad?
Yeah.
Take the thing they really love and make it not theirs anymore.
There's
make
like
it actually like show all the awfulness that exists.
For if anyone's like watching or if you can find the cover for the book, it has the tentacles like Lovecraft is known for, but all the tentacles are hoods from the Klansmen.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you couldn't get it, it's right there. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth, you know, touching because it is so profound and so great. And that's why I really loved that Jordan Peele took it on. When I heard rumor of it, I like lost my whole mind. And Guillermo del Toro has actually been working indefinitely on a Lovecraft film. So it's like, you know.
He's great with the monsters. Too, so I'm sure he's
and he'd really probably, cool you know, subvert some of the racism in there to take back the power, you know? Like, he would definitely be like, this is actually about, like, you know, the oppression of Mexican people or Spaniards or something, you know? He's so good at that. So, for anyone who doesn't know, I'm going to read a summary from Goodreads. I could read the back of this, but I'm going to read the summary from Goodreads. Actually, I think it's the same. I'm going to read the back of this book instead. Chicago, 1954. When his father goes missing, 22-year-old Army veteran Atticus Turner embarks on a road trip to New England to find him, accompanied by his Uncle George, publisher of the Safe Negro Travel Guide, and his childhood friend, Letitia. On their journey to the manor of Samuel Braithwaite, heir to the estate that owned one of Atticus's ancestors, they encounter both mundane terrors of white America and malevolent spirits that seem straight out of the weird tales George devours. I'm going to stop there. So, like I said before, it's an anthology. In each one, you know, we are shown a strong Black protagonist who is combating not just the, you know, absurd horror that comes with, like, the supernatural realm.
Monsters, Shaggoths.
Yes. Not just those, but simultaneously, because they are a Black person in 1954 America, are also confronting the horrors of America, which happen to just be plain old white people and the systems in place to oppress and hurt them, right?
Horrors of systemic racism.
Yep. So, I just want to say we're running right into spoiler central. We're gonna, like, I thought, like, I wrote the script a bunch and I kept trying to think of ways to not spoil things, but in order for me to explain to you why these things are the way that they are and why they're important, I gotta tell you what it is.
Yeah.
So I'm trying not to super spoil it. I'm not telling all the stories.
Yeah, but if you're, like, really excited to read the book because you haven't yet, or you really just want to wait till it is unveiled on the screen.
Yeah.
Pause.
Yes.
Get off the spoiler train.
Yeah.
Come back in a little bit.
Yeah.
And rejoin us.
Yeah. And then, if you're like, oh, I didn't realize that's what that happened.
Well, then you know now.
Yes, exactly. So I'm only going to focus on a few of the stories from the anthology. So even if you get spoiled a few, there's still a lot. I'm actually not even going to talk about one of my favorite ones in here, like my all-time favorite one. I'm not going to touch on.
Because it's so good you want them to experience
I want them to... I hope that people would love it as much as I did, just because I really love that character. I think she's so amazing. So all of them are phenomenal, but she's my favorite. So, so I'm just going to kind of pop into a few of them. So as it's mentioned, Atticus is our main character. He's a veteran, which is also like this... when we're looking at things now, I saw like a tweet by someone where it said... why are white people under the impression that like black people's ancestors didn't also fight in the same wars? Like they're also veterans.
Like, spit at by the white soldiers, which is what we see in the TV show that we're talking about later.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
They were just treated awfully. They were there.
They were there. So he's a veteran, and that's like, kind of telling a story in and of itself, because despite fighting for his country, he's still seen as a lesser citizen, right? But Atticus is our main character, named for Atticus Finch of To Kill a Mockingbird. He is searching for his missing father, Montrose, and on this journey discovers a family secret that ties them to a culty Lovecraftian white family of science wizards. Think about it. Think about wizards. Think about that.
Science wizards?
Yeah. They try to like explain the cultism by way of science, right? But they're like...
So traditionalists.
Yes, kind of like that.
Religion science.
Yeah, it is like, it's a little bit like, and it's, and I mean, so it's, when you're thinking about Lovecraft, right, you have these cultists and these people who are awakening this beast, and they're in this unique society that they think only they have the right to, because it is, their birthright, and no one else, like, right. Need I say more about what's happening?
That's why they're the
science wizards.
Science wizards.
Okay. And that's one of, like, I'm not going to spoil things that I'm not going to tell you what they learned about their ties to this cult family, because that's a big thing and it's really good. But it's one of the parts that like totally like I feel like Lovecraft is like,
you dip your toe and then you do the whole thing.
Yeah. Lovecraft is definitely turning in his grave, and it's wonderful. Like, don't let him sleep. He can't sleep. So Atticus finds out that his father is pursuing this lead to find out the truth of what's going on in the past, Atticus's past, actually, because it's the mom's history that it's tied to, because her ancestors had worked for this family, right? So he finds out that his dad has traveled to a place in New England, Lovecraft's favorite place, because loved England. So he goes to travel there. He takes his uncle George, who writes the Safety Grow Travel Guide, which is the real life Green Book. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, it was essentially a guide for people of color during Jim Crow of places that they could be safe. So it's like, this is a hotel you can stay at. This is a town you need to avoid and go around. Here's a gas station you can stop at. Like, here's a refuge. Here's a place absolutely no, because that's just what the world was.
Yeah, and it's they usually would list prices and like how much it would cost to stay there. And also, I remember I read like I'm bad at reading, guys, but I tried. But there's only so much time. But I got through a little bit of it. And the first like intro into the book is like this whole outline where he's following the book, and then he gets stuck at a gas station that's not on the list. And like immediately you're thrown into like, you're in this supernatural world. But the scariest thing is having to like approach these very obvious white supremacists who do not want to help him. And like that, like anxiety and stress within that moment.
Yeah, I think like part of it is too, like, because in the very beginning, Atticus is pulled over and there's like really high tension. And like, you think about it, like, this is 1954 and like people are so quick to be like, well, that was the past, like, blah, 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 right? But then you think back to Philando Castile, and you're like, that just happened. Like, how can you tell me that was so long ago? It just happened, right? Exactly. So there's a lot of things that, like, Matt Ruff, who is the writer, didn't he couldn't predict the future, but he knew enough about our world that it is happening, and it was very relevant, and it's not even that, like, scientific, right? So he goes to find his father, who's now gone missing, on this pursuit. And one of the problems is that they have to drive through a sundown town. So another education time for people who don't know what a sundown town was essentially, I found something on Wikipedia that had the specific explanation of what it was. Here it is. Sundown town is... white municipalities or neighborhoods in the United States that practice a form of segregation by excluding non-whites via some combination of discriminatory local laws, intimidation, and violence. It was essentially towns that took the law into their own hands and were adamant about keeping it segregated.
So, Fishtown.
Yeah.
South Philly.
Yes.
White men with weapons.
Who don't even want
supported by the police.
Yeah, who don't want, Black Lives Matter protests to come through their beautiful towns.
Yeah.
So they have to go through this town. And it was so intense. Like, it was immediately terrifying to read. Like, up until this, nothing spooky has happened. All the horror has been, like, police. Or, like, authority figures, right? And so they're driving through, they make a plan, they know they have to go through this town because they have their book, they know where the safe places are, and this is not it. And so they wait till it's night, they turn off their headlights, and they drive through in an attempt to get through. And they get pretty much almost to the end. They get to the woods, which is where they're going to have to go through. The road is blocked off, but that's where the town is that they need to go. And as soon as they get there, the lights turn on. Because the sheriff and all his friends knew that they were coming through, of course. And it is terrifying. It all happens in, like, a flash. So there's I read this article on Lit Reactor by Bart Bishop called Horror While Black, Race in Matt Ruff's Lovecraft Country. And it parses out this specific part of the book. So he says, the next few moments unfolded with a grim familiarity. They were ordered from the truck, struck, screamed at, searched, struck again, and finally marched to the back of the Packard and made to sit on the rear bumper with their hands behind their heads and their feet crossed in front of them. They're accused of being burglars and car thieves, but luckily, as they're marched into the woods, a beast, what Atticus has earlier joked was a shoggoth, intervenes. So it's this, like, very intense scene where you're just like, they are gonna be murdered. Because the police are essentially saying that. They're just like, oh, we got word that someone got robbed. You fit the description. No one was in their town. And so now we have the right to do this. Yeah. And so then this monster comes out of the woods that we don't really see, but it is a monster. And it's, like, shadowy, whatever, that, attacks the police and them, and they end up running and getting to safety. Yeah. And it's like, here's this literal monster, this literal other being, not human at all.
Terrifying. It's not even as terrifying as the white people.
It's a walk in the park.
Yeah.
It's just, like, so ridiculous. And I think it's, like, this kind of is, like, the string that brings them all together, because they all have this. There's always a run-in with police or some kind of authority figure in each one of these stories, and it's never seen as the heroic time. Like, if you were a white person in a Lovecraft book and you experienced something scary and you ran away and you ran into an officer, you would be relieved. It's like in Get Out at the end when we see those lights, no one felt relieved. Everyone was scared, which is the opposite of what people tell you you're supposed to be feeling. And this is why we do not need police, because that's not what they do, right? And so it really tells you this in every single one of these stories. There's this other story of Letitia who buys a house in a white neighborhood because she came upon a lot of money.
Yeah.
So she can afford a house, and she can afford it in this nice neighborhood. But she's the first person of color in this neighborhood. So the neighbors are attacking her. They throw bricks through her window. They try to, like, burn it down. They are, like, you know, assaulting her, all this stuff. And then also, spoilers, her house is haunted by one of these cults, racist, old-timey.
It's both?
White, yes. So she has this ghost in her house. She's trying to, like, fight the outside enemies, the inside enemies, blah, 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 right? And she, at some point, just confronts this ghost. And she's just like, I bought this house. I respect that you used to have this house, but it's in my name now. And you're going to respect that it's my house. So this is not going to happen anymore. Like, you're not going to scare me out no matter what you throw, no matter how many things you, like, rattle in the night. Like, I'm not going anywhere. Yeah. And it's the same thing she says to the people out there, right? Yeah. She's like, no, I'm not afraid of you. I'm not going to do it. Yeah. Right? And eventually she, like, overcomes this. And for me, it was thinking, like, in Lovecraft stories, he has these protagonists. And that's one of the things that I always, like, enjoyed was, like, when we play their games, or we're always just a person. Like, if you play Call of Cthulhu, you're just a dude who found a bat, who stumbled upon a monster, and now they're like, I gotta fix
no one
the
has
world.
Superpowers. No one has, like, magic, really. You're just a person, and you're in this, like, what situation?
Yeah. And I think the thing that is prevalent in a lot of Lovecraft stories is that there is something that's bigger than us, and it, like, if we are confronted with that evil, that otherworldly being, that will just crumble, will just fall apart. They go mad, right? They lose their mind, they die, like, just looking at things all the time, right? And then we have this woman who is like, I have to go out and fight those people, and then I come in here, and this is supposed to be, like, my home. And she confronts this supernatural being, and she's like, you're not scary. Because my whole life is that. And so it just makes me think of, like, what Ariel said, right? And there's, you know, a piece of that that's unfortunate in that it does make them stronger, right? Like, the fact that these characters have seen that, and they live that all the time. So fear is not new. It can't, you know, scramble them or, like, make them lose their balance, because that's a constant. So when they're confronted with these horrific monsters, it's like, no, like, these things are scary. Those things can hurt me. And if you're going to try, then it's fine. Go give it a shot, you know? Like, but don't mess with me, you know? And she does a great job. She works it out, and it's pretty phenomenal. But there's also this other thing. There's another story in here that really shows, like, privilege. And that is with... So there's, like I said, there's this cult family. So the main cultist has this son named Henry who fell in love with one of the maids who was a black woman. And they run away together. So his mom, predicting, like, that his father was unhinged and that he was in danger, equipped him with spells to protect him from the rest of the wizards, science wizards. Because she was like, your dad is going to come after you. Your dad is going to try to hurt you if you try to leave them. And so finds his lady and, like, brings her to this white town. And he thinks, like, they have a son, a mixed son, and he lives in this world, like, of thought that he's safe, right? Like, he's amongst fellow white people. He's white. He thinks that he's protected because to him, the biggest villain was his father, who has magic, has literal magic that can kill him. But he's protected from that because of his mom. But what he did not take into account is that these white people were going to hate him for having a black wife and would then murder them. Like, he didn't know the real world horror that was there. And she knew and was like, we can't be here, you know, like, and they lost their lives for that, for his ignorance and not understanding that that was what they should have been afraid of the whole time. And, like, reading that, I was like, that's, like, you know, like, I was like, oh my God, he just didn't even think about it. It never occurred to him that he could be targeted.
Yeah. It's a very real thing that a lot of people are, like, starting to wake up from, but still so many that, like, aren't. They're, like, not even, it's just like, what?
Yeah.
So it's it's a very big problem. And it's good that it was showed kind of so accurately in that book.
Yeah, and that happens a lot. There's, some trouble with colorism, too. Mm-hmm. There's Letitia's sister, Ruby, who, in her story, I think it's like, the title of it is like a nod to what's going on. Oh, it's the chapter is titled Jekyll and Hyde Park. So she essentially comes across and gets the ability to transform into a white woman. And it is something that she has always kind of wanted. Like, she, unlike Letitia and the other Black characters who are so strong, like, it's like, you're wrong for hating me for what I am. She also hated her for who she was. So there's, like, that internal battle of, like, it has gotten to her, right? So there's, she just believed the rhetoric that is going around that she's less because of this color, right? And so she becomes a white woman and is kind of masquerading, and she, immediately fits into this role. She tries to take advantage of it. She had lost her job earlier because someone, like her boss, accused her of stealing. It wasn't her. She goes to, like, be a model, and she, like, feels at home. And there's, like, a lot of battle with her feeling guilty for that. But I think the big thing with that is really, like, how she was, like, seeing herself and seeing that. And it's immediate how she's, like, the same person, right? She's the same person inside, but how differently she's cheated and she, like, or treated, and, like, she, like, befriends a cop or, like, talks to a cop and they actually talk to her instead of, like, literally, like, a few paragraphs before that when she's Ruby, she's treated like crap and almost, like, arrested for being in, like, the same elevator as someone, right? And it's just like that part, like, it dives into all these different nuanced things in this community that they're always battling, and there's, like, supernatural interesting things that are happening, which, reminds, like, Afrofuturism, like Octavia Butler and all of that. It's, showing and revealing the flaws of our current society under the guise of mysticism and, you know, all of that. And so I think it, like, says a lot that this specific character got so much power and joy from being white because of, like, how she saw herself and the kinds of flaws with that. And also her relationship with her sister and kind of battling that is phenomenal, honestly. Yeah. So I think, like, some of the stories that I skipped feature, really strong women. There's one with a young boy who eventually confronts a police, like, runs into a police officer. Yes. I won't, like, go into that one, but that one kind of reminded me of Bedeviled, when the boy is, like, running and he has all the bedeviled things and he goes up to the cop even though in his heart he doesn't want to do that, and then it turned out to be bedeviled. That's kind of what happens. Like, he is being traumatized by a relic of the past that connects him to this other, like, it's all the races is in this object, and he is being confronted with it as a young boy. There's also, like, parts of that because he's, like, a young nerd. Like, he wants to get into the comic book shop and they won't let him because he's a Black boy. And so there's also that whole thing of, like, you're not Black because you like anime, like, those kinds of things that nerds of color have had to deal with, right? And, like, you're not Black because you act white, which isn't a thing. You're just acting like yourself, and you can like the things that you want to like. But it's art, like, even in that, like, even in this young boy in 1954, it has to deal with that already.
Well, because it's just so systemic that it's ingrained in every facet of what we built. This country was built in the poison of, like, systemic oppression and racism, and it affects literally everybody. No one is immune to it, and that, like, there are those who benefit and there are those who it, like, the media in the world just is so whitewashed that it makes people feel like they're lesser because of the fact that there's just literally no representation. It's like we've talked about it a bunch of different times in a lot of different ways, where it's just like it's literally in everything, and it's going to be a slow burn to get it to go a different way because it's literally in every single ounce of this country.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy battle, but like it's real. It affects every single human.
And I think, something we'll talk more about in our next episode is like this generational pain, right? That keeps going. And I think something that we found when we were talking about even just like See You Yesterday, right? We were like, it is absurd that had to be made, it taking place in present day in 2019. And that those are the problems that it was addressing, right? And those are the messages. And those messages are the same messages that we've been hearing for years, for forever, right? And like since the history of America, right? Yeah. And so it's like, you look at this and it's like the 1950s, but it's so easy that if they took the Lovecraft Country like TV show and made it in modern day, it'd have the same stories.
Oh my God, yeah. No, I mean, it's all very intentional. Our textbooks are made in Texas.
Yeah.
They're intentionally made to not include stories of people of color, LGBTQIA folks. Like they intentionally leave out a lot of stuff, especially if your majority of the population is lower classes, middle class, they're attending public schools. Public schools, the textbooks are decided by random people in Texas who are influenced strongly by rich people. So it's like, it's just very intentional. The people who are up want to stay up. What we're trying to do right now is blow up the train. Yeah. If you saw our class as an episode, like it's going to take a lot of time, and we're not going to be able to do it, honestly, probably within the system. I'm not saying let's start war, but...
We're also not saying not to start war.
I'll definitely die, but I'll go out fighting. Like, it's totally fine. It's not an easy road. It's literally the reason you don't know things is because they don't want you to know. Yeah. And that sounds like I'm a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
But that's it's literally just like everything. They just don't teach the information that we need to know. And they keep schools intentionally underfunded so that there's not enough time or resources or anything.
And they're intentionally locking youth up so that their lives are done at the beginning. There's no resources to help them, and they're perpetually in this system of incarceration. And then we're, pumping drugs and weapons into these communities of color and being surprised when things are going on in there. And then they're not, we're fueling in all these outsiders to enforce laws that are there against them. They are written to oppress them.
Yeah, it's literally not to protect anybody except for the people in power, which is cis white men who are rich. Yeah. So it's just honestly, it's very intentional. And a lot of people, they don't even realize how blind they are. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the grossest part. Because they could think that they're good people.
Yeah.
And it's just so ingrained in who we are as a society that it's just so sad and so gross.
Yeah. And I hope that people are learning from that, because I think the story with Henry Winthrop, who had his mixed race family, shows kind of the errors of a failed ally, right? He loved a person of color. He saw past the racism of his father in that way. Mm-hmm. But he was not a purposeful and educated ally to be aware of the dangers and to acknowledge them. And that's the thing too. It's we can all say people all the time say, I don't see color, right? Which is incorrect. That's not how you're supposed to see things. Because if you don't see color, then you can't see patterns, right? You can't see that there's a problem and then work to fix it. And that's the problem with Henry Winthrop and with allies who are I have black friends, right? Or I don't hate them outwardly, right? But you're not actively trying to fight back against this system that is there to oppress them and to hurt them. So then you are not friends of them. You are not helping them. You are not an ally. Yeah. And I think that's a big thing that people are neglecting. And certainly at this time, I think more people are seeing that. And understanding that and trying harder. And I hope that keeps going, and I hope it's not all performance. And we, like, when it stops, trending on Twitter, that we're still out there and we're still fighting. Because there's a lot that has to be learned. And, if we have a lot of, things that we're reading that are nonfiction, but if you're someone who, like, needs something that is fictional, that can still educate you.
Yeah, fictional but not. There's
plenty of Afrofuturism texts that you can read. Lots of Octavia Butler. There's lots of local artists who do things. There's so many things that you can indulge in. You can definitely read Lovecraft Country and get a lot out of it. Because I think, what at the end of the day, what I think Lovecraft Country is trying to tell you is that for a person of color, a Black person in Jim Crow era America, and even today, that the real world is so much more terrifying than any cosmic, mind-altering, ridiculous being. Like, they know the true face of America, which is way more terrifying than you could ever write. You can't make it up, right? Like and I think it's profound. I think it's something that people should read to find that, I dare you to try to see if you would be more afraid of the monsters in here than you are of the white man in a suit.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you what, like, terrified. And they're so, like, and what I really love about these characters is they're just so big. Like, their personalities are big. They are all independent of each other. And it's like we were saying, what representation, right? We never get that. You never get several people of color who are different things, know? And this, they're all just so unique. They're also themselves, and they're also beautiful and, like, large personalities, like, dedicated to who they are. And some of them are good, some of them are bad, right? Like, and I think it's just phenomenal. They all have their roles, and there's history in it.
And it's like Nothing About Us Without Us. Like, he worked closely with a bunch of different people to help make sure that the stories were not just his interpretation.
Yes. Yeah. And that's, like, something I struggled with when I was reading it, because I was like, Matt Ruff, and then I flipped it over and I was like, this is a white guy.
Why is he about this? It's not his
time. I looked him up, and, I went into depth on what he studied and how he, like, what right he had to these stories, and it checked out. And that's the only reason I kept going. Honestly, because I was like, I need to make sure this isn't another person trying to tell me like what the world's supposed to be for a person of color if you're not. But he did his research, he did his due diligence, and he did it justice. And so I'm very excited to see what HBO and what Jordan Peele and co create. I'm very, very excited for it to see it on screen. And I'm just like, most of me, what I'm excited for is for people to get really excited about this book.
Yeah.
And to get excited about these stories. Because I can finally talk to people about it. Because I've been like, have you read this? Can someone please read this so I can talk to you for like 5 I need to get this out. And it's for that I'm thankful for this platform, because then I can, talk about this. Because there's, there's strength in seeing the real world.
Yeah.
And confronting it.
I mean, it's really true that knowledge is power, and we're kept from education and reading on purpose. The way to get back to power is to learn. You're never done. No one is immune. Everyone's racist. Yeah. We all just need to learn more and not use the fact we just don't know things as an excuse.
Yeah.
And also just, like, realize your voice actually does have power.
Yeah.
Stand up.
Yeah.
Say something.
So I think, because this is supposed to be a mini-sode.
Yeah. I think we talked about
it. There's not really a rating section like we did at one point. But I'm like, the rating is we love it. It's great.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. I hope you guys read it, and I hope you guys learn, and that you're, educating yourself and unlearning a lot of the things so that we can all confront the real monsters of white supremacy in America.
Yeah.
And so tune in next week, because we're on a roll.
Yeah, it's going.
So we're glad to be back. I hope you enjoy this episode.
Yeah.
Right,
thanks, don't get married.
Delete your kids. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so go there, sign some petitions.
We'll put links in the description, probably, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do some stuff.
Yeah.
Get
you know where
done.
it is. Go to blacklivesmatter.com.
Yeah.
And let's put Breonna Taylor's, put the police in jail. Because of justice, right? You want to tell us justice is real? Do it then.
Yeah, just get rid of the police.
Yeah.
Just get rid of all of it.
Yeah.
Just like the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not saying Thanos, but like...
We're going to get a little more into our specific government next episode.
Just snapping, for the
I have a lot to say.
You'll make it go now.
Bye.
Bye.